start that now. Well, welcome all to your convening call on how to be a sanctuary congregation. We have some very lovely panelists tonight who are going to be sharing with us very different perspectives. We have Denise Konen, if you want to wave, Denise. She's at the First Universalist Church of Minneapolis, and she is part of the small team of people who are just now getting underway with moving us in the direction of being a sanctuary congregation. So she has things to share about the beginning stages of the work. We have David Poundstone from Denver, who is linked with the Quaker Society out there, who has insight about being a sanctuary congregation as well, and will share that with us. Very excited to hear from David. And we also are being joined by Katia Hansen of UU Rise. We'll learn all about her organization soon, but she and her organization help provide technical support and legal resources, and are in general, I think I'll have her word it herself, but I see her as a very important resource for any congregation wanting to do this work. So it's going to be a great call, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to start tonight with a quick little chalice lighting. Hopefully you can see my chalice. There it is. Okay. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It is an everlasting flame for this community. It offers its warmth to those who are cold. It provides light to those who would see. It purifies and transforms this sanctuary into sacred space, this congregation into sacred community. May its flame burn true and high and strong. Well, for the interest of tonight's session here and us getting to know each other a little bit more, I would love to spend maybe just about 15 or so minutes going around here and introducing ourselves. And I'm going to have a pretty big ask of you all tonight. I would love for our answers to be pretty brief because we have a lot to discuss. But I'm very curious to know your name and then where you come from, if you're in congregation here in Minnesota or outside Minnesota, to name who you're with. Then I'm also curious if you or your ancestors are not natively from America, where they're from. And then the other thing I'm very curious about is what brought you here tonight. So if you just take a minute here at the beginning of our session to think about maybe like a one-sentence summary of what brought you here. It might be a story, but just to keep it really brief. One big thing that pulled you here tonight. And then just a reminder, if people are joining us, please keep your microphones on mute. Otherwise, we get quite a bit of audio feedback. And then only unmute yourself when you're speaking. Thank you very much. And I'll actually begin just to get things rolling. I am Jack Gady. I am located in Minneapolis, and I am the intern for Justice and Religious Leadership with MUSJA, which is Minnesota UU Social Justice Alliance. The majority of my ancestors came from Denmark and Germany, but I am most close with those that came from Denmark. And my story, the thing that really compels me to be here tonight and to be in the work of immigration justice, is that I have actually a coworker who has been deported once before and was separated from her family, came back about 6 years later, and that's when I met her. And I just got to know her as such a lovely human being. And she got to share with me that experience. And it really broke me open to the brokenness of our immigration system.
I'll go next. Can you hear me? I'm Kelly Clement. I'm one of the ministers at First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis. My ancestors came from somewhere in Europe, somewhere in Northern Europe. The name Clement is an old name, and so we don't know a whole lot more. What I know about my people is that they were pioneers in Texas and Arkansas. And I am really interested in this one, because of so many intersecting justice moments that come together when people are worried about where they will live, where they will be. I can think of lots of ways that this may be important. And because members of my congregation are looking to me and saying, Kelly, what are we doing? And I was unable to go to the training when it happened last week or the week before, and so that's why I'm here tonight. And I would propose that as we do this check-in, that we then call on someone else. So if that's okay, that's the way I do it on another Zoom group. So I'm going to call on Susan Bailey. Hi, Susan in Duluth.
Hi, Kelly and Jack. Thank you. I just tuned in, so I'm not sure what you're asking me to include in the check-in. But I can say that I'll try and punt based on what I just heard from Kelly. I come from a background where my parents did a rather bold thing in choosing each other and getting married. My father was a Protestant from Boston area in Massachusetts, and my mother was a Jewish woman from the southern part of the state of Georgia, close to Florida, in a very prominent Jewish family. And they married and moved up to New England, and that's how I ended up in the Unitarian Church, was a way for them to raise their children in a faith community that allowed them to both honor their faith backgrounds. I've done some of the genealogy for my mother's family in particular as a way to get more connected with the family that lived farther away that I didn't know as well. And her family all came over from what is now Poland. I'm not aware of people in my family who were killed during the Holocaust, but it's very likely that there were some, if I were able to better cross the pond and make those genealogical connections, I'm sure they're there.
And then Susan, just to fill you in on the last part of the question, it's what brought you here tonight, and just a quick story maybe, or a moment that really makes you passionate about immigration justice. Thanks.
Okay. Our congregation has dealt with sanctuary issues in the past and has found it a very divisive issue. And I see us at a time when we are likely to be again called to address issues of sanctuary, and I would like to see our congregation better prepared this time to rise to the occasion when it presents itself in a way that will not be damaging to the congregation.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Susan. And who do you want to call on next? I'll call on Jane Bacon.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm from Jane Bacon from Whiteberry Unitarian Universalist Church, which is just north of St. Paul. And my background is Irish and Italian. And I grew up being told I was an American, and we didn't talk about any of that other stuff. So, and briefly, what calls me tonight is our congregation is talking about being a sanctuary congregation, and I'm trying to find out as much as I can, find out what other UU congregations are doing and thinking about, and I'm certainly very interested in what Susan Daly just said about it being divisive, and of course immediately curious about in what way, and certainly wanting to avoid that with our congregation. So that's why I'm here. Thank you. How about Ann Freiberger?
Thank you, Jane. I'm Ann Freiberger. I'm with Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Duluth with Sue, and she told me about this. My background on my father's side was German. I don't know my background on my mother's side. I've heard it's somewhat Native American in part, but the National Geographic Genome Project says I'm a Viking. And what brought me here tonight is Trump. That's it. Thank you.
I'll go next. My name is Jill Swindeman. I'm the youth director with White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church for 14 years now. And my family is Swiss. The Schwendemans come from a village in Switzerland up in the mountains. And on the other side, Norwegian and Czechoslovakian and British. And what brings me here is our congregation has just taken steps toward being a sanctuary congregation. And I'm very happy about our standing there, very sad about the reason for it. I love someone who is whose family is in danger because of what's happening, and I'm very concerned about that person, which is the main reason I'm here. I don't have a list in front of me, so I can't nominate the next person. I'm on the phone.
I will nominate the Sues to go next.
Okay, hi, I'm Sue Willis, and this is Susan Dorbeck. We are from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of DeKalb in DeKalb, Illinois. My personal family background is sort of generalized European, Northern European, Irish, English, Flemish, Danish, and who knows what. I'm interested in the sanctuary movement now because I was involved somewhat in the sanctuary movement back in the 1980s when I lived in Oklahoma, and a lot of the churches there were acting as sanctuaries or otherwise assisting Central American refugees, mostly to get to Canada because there wasn't really any good place for them here. So I'll now let Susan go.
Hi, I'm my background is German, English, Scottish, Irish, pretty typical. I'm here because of Trump. I've taught first year composition and had many students from inner city Chicago who were sons and daughters of immigrants, legal and illegal, and I've heard some of the stories. I am concerned for them. We have a large Hispanic population.
Yeah. Oh, and our church here is becoming a sanctuary congregation, and so we're fact finding. And let's see, I would nominate Sarah. I don't think he's talked yet.
Sarah Smalley, are you available to do a check-in?
Yes, I was going to say I had a hard time hearing if that was my name or not.
Yep, it was you.
I was trying to unmute. Yes, perfect. Thank you. So I'm Sarah Smalley. I serve the Unitarian Universalist Church of Minnetonka as their ministerial intern. And all of my ancestors were immigrants from Germany a few generations ago, but they all can be traced back to German farmers. And there's a lot of reasons I'm on this call. I think the primary one is, of course, as the ministerial intern at the Minnetonka Church, which is in Wayzata. The initial image of that congregation may be that it is an entirely white area. However, it also serves people in Hopkins as part of the community. And Hopkins has a very large immigrant population, particularly from Somalia. So immigration is a ongoing part of the conversation within the congregation. And so I'm working with the Social Justice Committee just to start this conversation. And I think people are pretty motivated. So thank you.
And I will
And
nominate.
I can't choose someone else either. Thank you,
I will
Jack.
nominate Suzanne.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I don't have any video tonight, so it's just my voice.
No worries.
I'm from First Universalist, and I am working with Denise Konen and some other folks to get this movement going again at First Universalist. And my background, I'm all over the place. So French, German, Norwegian, Scottish, English, just about everything in the kitchen sink, I think. Again, I think like Sarah, there's multiple reasons why I feel like this is important to do. I mean, I think as a UU, it's what we're called to do, you know, to do what we can, when we can, where we can. And just from my own heart, when I heard Justin, our minister, saying from the you know, in his sermon that we were going to start up Sanctuary again, it just right then and there, I knew that I wanted to be involved. So I'm delighted to be working on this, and it's great to see all you. All there are folks from all over the country who are with us too on this. Thank you. And I will nominate Denise.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hi, everybody. I'm Denise Konen. I'm from First Universalist Church in uptown Minneapolis. And I think my mother's side is Polish, Lewandowski, and my father's side is German, Konen. I am here because I have many Latino and Hispanic friends from South America and Mexico. I'm a parent educator and have worked with families for many years, developed a program in the Hopkins, Minnetonka area for Latino Hispanic families, and they are calling me with fear in their voices, and it breaks my heart. And I too, just like Suzanne, when I heard Justin speak and just mentioned the word sanctuary, I called him up and he immediately said, would you spearhead this? And I said yes, and I never say yes to being in charge of something. I do not like it, but I said yes because it matters so much to me. I want to stand with people who are being marginalized. And we've been on a racial justice journey for 4 years, so we were ready, and I feel ready to do this.
Awesome. I think Anne from Rochester go next.
Thank you.
Hi there. Let's see. I'm from First Unitarian Universalist in Rochester. I'm on the call actually primarily because of Trump, honestly, and because I want to better understand what it takes to be a sanctuary congregation, so that if the issue does come up in our congregation, I'm at least prepared to discuss it and work on it. In terms of my background, on one side, I'm a second-generation Scottish American. On the other side, I'm not really sure how far back it goes, but basically Welsh, English, Scottish, and Irish. Pretty much British Isles. And I can't nominate anybody because I can't see anybody.
Yep. Thank you very much, Anne. We'll go to Stephanie next. Stephanie, I just typed in the questions to the chat box, so hopefully you'll be able to roll with the quick question for you.
Absolutely. Excuse me, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Junior Christian. Okay, so my name is Stephanie Beleggi. I'm with Unitarian Universalist Church in Minnetonka. I'm sure my ancestors immigrated here from somewhere. I don't know where. I think somewhere in Europe, Eurocentric. But that's always been just sort of a open question for my family. And what brought me here tonight? So a woman in our congregation, Naomi Wente, has been starting to re-engage our congregation in social justice issues. And I'm pretty new to Unitarianism. I've been here coming to this church for just under a year. And so I'm just trying to get more information, really, just get more educated on it.
And then Katia and David, I might just have you wait with your answers before you speak, if that's okay. Awesome. Well, so my call now, for the next just maybe few minutes, is just a quick introduction. I know most of you know already about the sanctuary movement, sanctuary work in general. But I just wanted to, I guess, put out a few resources as what will be helpful for us moving forward, even for our own benefit. Two organizations that are nationwide that have been very helpful in learning more about sanctuary work are Cosecha, which is Spanish for harvest. I will actually put a link to their main website in the chat box right now. The website is in Spanish, and it is lahuelga.com. I'll just chat it right down here for everyone to see it. They have been a really great place, a resource place, and they are currently working on 4 different campaigns. One of them is to increase the sanctuary movement with faith movements, with faith communities. One is to ask campuses to be sanctuary campuses. One they're calling Todos Nosotros, which means we are all, asking Democrats to do more in their final few weeks in power to protect the entire immigrant community. And then the 4th campaign they're working on right now is called Migrant Boycott, where they're asking people to actually boycott, I think the migrants themselves, to boycott companies that take advantage of their cheap labor. Really interesting and I would say innovative strategy. So that's a really great resource just to learn more about the work of Cosecha. And then another movement is called Sanctuary itself. And the website is also very helpful. And they go through individual stories of people who have been in congregations and they have won their battle to win their stay of removal. So that's a really great place to start as well. And I think we'll learn more about that from David. And then something else I wanted to just bring up is locally, we have this organization called Isaiah, Minnesota, an interfaith collaborative organization. And they're running a lot of trainings about sanctuary work. So Denise and others have gone to the first few, but they're doing teach-ins every Thursday for a few weeks now. So we can find that information on Facebook. But it is building up to this kind of unveiling that will take place January 28th, where they're hoping that at least 100 congregations will have committed to become a sanctuary congregation and then make that announcement publicly on January 28th. So there's an event page about that on Facebook, and Denise will, I think, can tell us more about that a little bit. But there's a lot happening that we can get involved in right now. And so I don't want to take up too much more of the time because we have such great speakers, but just, yeah, there's great resources here, and I would love to even provide more for you. And I'll do that in a post-call email, probably in the next few days. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Denise. If you wouldn't mind, Denise, talking about a little bit of these beginning stages of the sanctuary work that you're doing with First Universalist. That'd be great.
Sure. We started right after the election. And I basically started by talking to people who I thought would be good on a team like this. I especially wanted people that had a personal connection to communities who were being targeted. And I knew some in our congregation. So I think we have at least 4 people on our team that have very strong ties with the Latino Hispanic community. One works for a school as a support staff. One is a Spanish immersion teacher. Myself as a parent educator who's worked with people. And not remembering. I thought there was 4. And then we don't have any connection to the Somali community, and there's a large Somali community in Minnesota. And except for we have a multi-faith roundtable that I've been working with, and I think Rabbi Latz has some connections with some leaders in the Somali community. So we're hoping personal connections will make a big difference in letting people know that we're a safe place to be. So after I organized the people, Justin also had some calls from people. That's our minister, Justin Schroeder. And they identified themselves as someone who was very interested in sanctuary work. So it just took whoever we took that were excited. And that's been lovely because everybody brings lots of different skills and gifts. And so we have about 10 people. And in our first meeting, we basically talked about what it meant for us to be a sanctuary church. And I think we are going about it a little different than what I'm hearing most people and what I'm hearing a lot of Isaiahs going at it, is that our focus is not just providing sanctuary, it's also providing and being in resistance to what is happening. So hoping to do more than just make a safe space for people, but hoping to have maybe immigration clinics, go to hearings, do jail support for people, doing a lot more, and knowing that it has to go, we believe has to go hand in hand with our racial justice mission too.
Hey Denise, I was wondering too if you had already encountered any challenges, or what you maybe see might be challenges in getting the whole congregation on board, and what that process looks like for you.
Well, one of the challenges might be, well, the good news is I do feel that we have a boost because we've already been on a journey of racial justice, and so I do feel there's many people that have an understanding of how we have to stand with marginalized and target people, and they're not going to be so shook up by us doing something which is pretty radical. I think that that's a huge advantage for us. I think some of the earlier problems may have been like, how are we going to do this? We don't have a shower in our church. And immediately I got this feeling like, oh no, this is going to stop us. And I went to our minister and he said, oh no, we'll do whatever it takes. And it gave me such a relief to have that kind of support that we can go forward. No matter what happens, that we'll get past any barrier, because this is more important than whether we have a shower or not. It's what do we believe? What does our faith ask us to do? And then just get past all the barriers. So that's the attitude I've been getting from the minister. And I guess because he chose me to do it, he knew that that's what I would do. And I'm grateful that he is behind this, because I have that kind of support. I think the other thing has just been, it's Christmas time and gathering people together. And I have probably 4 or 5 parents of young children, which I'm thrilled to have, but they have to juggle so many things with children. And yet I've been saying to them, they're feeling like they can't jump in with both feet. And I said, you don't have to. You just have to do one thing and do it well. And it doesn't have to be done in person. So if you're willing to make a lot of phone calls and do the legwork, it's all right. And it'll switch and change. So we talked about that quote at our last meeting, do what you can where you're at with what you have, by Roosevelt. And that's what we're focused on. What can each of us do in any way possible? And I think that's important, that everybody give what they can give. And we've already identified the rooms. So we've only had 2 meetings, and we've already identified the rooms we're going to use. We're started on getting people ready with where we're going to put the shower and how we're going to rig it up. And Suzanne here has a father who's a plumber. She says, no worries, this is not going to be a problem. Let's not spend time on this. Let's just, it'll get done. So that kind of an attitude really helps me to feel positive about what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Denise. I was wondering too, one last kind of question. What do you think, since First Universalist has a history of doing sanctuary work before, how does that inform us now? And you had told me a great quote, right, from an old reverend at the church. Can you share that with the group as well?
Yeah. Reverend Cummins, our minister from many years back, I don't know the history as well as Sarah Smalley and Suzanne do, but we were harboring, I think, a Vietnam resistor. And he said something like this to the authorities, you'll get him over my dead body, something like that. So we have a fierce history with the sanctuary movement, I understand. One of our members of our group has her family grew up in a church in, I think, Minnetonka maybe, St. Luke's church. And they had a person from El Salvador in the 80s living with them for over 2 years. And he may actually come to our service when Justin formally, because we haven't even formally announced this yet. We are going to formally announce that we're becoming a sanctuary church on January 15th. And this person may come and speak at our church on that day to tell us what it was like for him and what he, how the congregation responded to him and how he felt about being there. Because when he first came, he spoke no English at all. He's now a lawyer today and lives by, I think, one of the families from the church. So he is very much a part of our community now. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Denise. It's really good to get an idea of where what can this look like at the beginning stages. So thank you very much, Denise.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So David, this would be a great introduction for you to just tell the whole group now about who you are and the work you've done out there in Denver. I'm so glad to hear it as well.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? It looks like I fat-fingered my own name on the screen. So it's Poundstone with an N. You can think of Paula Poundstone. And the Poundstone name goes back to the 18th century, early 18th century, from some Germans who changed it from German. So, but I'm not so interested in my own background except to say that I'm in a part of the country in Colorado where I was actually born at one time in what was south of the Mexican border at one time. So borders to me are fairly porous and movable, and I'll just leave it at that. Everybody out here came here. Very few people are native to this region. I belong to the Mountainview Friends meeting, a Quaker organization. Members of, we say, the Religious Society of Friends. We're the unprogrammed type. I've only been a member for some 15 years, although I've been around longer than that. And I've heard stories from some of our members of their involvement in the original sanctuary movement out of Tucson in the 80s. And so a person like Jack Corbett and John Fife are revered among those people. And we still have people that go down to Arizona and do border work every year. So that is part of the legacy in our congregation of involvement. The involvement in the new sanctuary movement, which is, takes the name but calls itself new, for us began in 2014 in the summer. And I happened to be clerk of the meeting at that time and started filling in for one of the members who was going down to the border who was supposed to be doing this work. And thanks for correcting my name there, by the way. And so the organization we were the only non-Unitarian Universalist congregation getting involved in this. First Unitarian Society of Denver and First Universalist Church and Columbine Unitarian and a couple other Unitarian congregations in the North Metro area signed on as charter members, as supporters, because at that point the organization was already gearing up to provide sanctuary at the First Unitarian Church in downtown Denver for we weren't really talking about the name at that point, but it later became known that she was a very well-known Hispanic activist who was fighting her case and thought she might need to go into sanctuary because she kept getting these very short stays of deportation. So they were gearing up to provide her sanctuary, and then she got a stay. And then, so we had already announced that we were open for business, and lo and behold, a month or so later, a young man with a family from Mexico who was facing a final order of deportation presented himself and was screened and had taken in the sanctuary in about October of 2014. His name was Arturo Hernandez Garcia, and he stayed in sanctuary at the First Unitarian Church for 9 months. So as supporting members of the congregation, we, and I was very active as clerk in promoting our involvement and getting people on board. And one of the things that we passed in a minute, it wasn't really a question that was, any conflict for us. We were very well disposed to taking on supporting this work because it came to us through the American Friends Service Committee, which is a related Quaker-based organization, or originally Quaker-based. And the organizer, or the coordinator for the group, was the interfaith person on the staff there, who was very bilingual and very, energetic. And so it was through that connection, and she was the coordinator for the group, we got involved, and we just provided support to Arturo and got involved in the various actions that we would do, standing outside of either the local ICE field office or the downtown courthouse, trying to create publicity to support Arturo's case, or doing prayer services just to keep ourselves grounded. Because one of the keys to the New Sanctuary movement is the idea that this is a religious or a spiritual action. It's not necessarily political. And for me, I'll just say for my involvement, the transformative effect of the movement has been to stand on that first organizing day outside the First Unitarian Church with a sign that said, keep families together, and listening to the stories of 2 or 3 immigrant mothers with their children playing at their feet, telling how they had been fighting these complicated cases. And it just became the most obvious thing in the world to me, a very simple precept, keep families together. This is a value that ties to, and in Quaker lingo, we talk about our testimonies of community and equality and the integrity of families. And so I try to keep, whenever I talk about it, keep it to that very simple message. And it's not about abstract, demographics and cases. It becomes very concrete in the people that we accompany. And that's another key word that we like to use, is that we are accompanying these immigrants who are fighting their cases. We're not, we can't do it for them. All we can do is walk with them and share their struggle and help any way we can, any way they ask us. So as the coalition is still largely made up of the Unitarian Universalist congregations and ourselves, and one of our goals, strategic goals, which we keep saying we're going to try and work on, but now it becomes very obvious that we have to do this, is we need to broaden our base and have more churches, because we fully expect there will be more demand for sanctuary. But we also want to be broaden our base among the immigrant community and find immigrant congregations to help be our leadership. And we consider the immigrants that we're working with to be the leaders of the coalition. Our congregation got involved in being a sanctuary, and Jack, you cut me off if I go too long here. We got involved as a host congregation in January of 2015, when at a meeting to discuss what we were doing with Arturo, this other lady was there, Jeanette, who was originally to go into sanctuary, and her stay was expiring, and she was getting very anxious about what was she going to do again. There was no place for her to go. And during a break, it dawned on me that in our building, which is an old building, used to be a sorority house, we used to have a resident living in the building. And so there was already a ready-made apartment with a bathroom. We just weren't using it for that, hadn't for years. And I said, wait, we've got an apartment, we can do this. And I went to the meeting that Sunday, and I said, we have an urgent need. And it basically we had to restrain the meeting from jumping into doing it right away. We had to have a special meeting to discuss it. And so we took this lady in for a couple of weeks while she was anxious about how her stay was going to be, whether it would be given or not. And since then, we've taken in a couple of other people for very short stays. And then at the end of November, we took in a young woman who's a mother of two boys. One's just turned 1, the other's 8 years old. They're both American citizens, but she's from Peru, and she had already had a final order for deportation. She could have been picked up at any time, but she was trying to reopen a case to, so that she could get a criminal conviction reduced so that she could reopen the immigration case. So we're not fighting the legal side of that so much as trying to preserve her access to due process. It's a tricky situation. But anyway, we took her in 3 weeks ago today. We had a very public welcoming for her. A week and a half after she came in, we kind of gave immigration time to respond to a review for her stay, and they're still reviewing it. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. And so we've had very great press coverage for her coming into sanctuary. It's I've seen it. There was a great story in the Washington Post, and there's been something on CNN. The local TV stations were there. So that is all something that we've learned to really value, is to try and use these and develop these allies in the press to tell this story. And so we're going to have a Posadas event at our meeting house this Wednesday. It's just, and part of the whole process of being in sanctuary is to develop the community around the person in sanctuary.
Yeah.
To help bring people in, family, the other members of the community, the other members of the coalition, and just be together and celebrate the holidays. And I'm, just hoping that we can get through the holiday period with some, without any difficulties. It was just we did this with Arturo. We had potlucks and things like that just to have fellowship together. So anyway, that's where we are with our action, and the reason I'm here and took the invitation to be here was just to share this story with you.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of logistical coordination and lots of volunteers, and in finding all the Spanish speakers that you can to help. So
thank you very much, David. It's so helpful to get a real on the ground perspective. I'll just ask the group who are gathered tonight, if you do have any questions for David, to kind of flag those. We're going to move on to have Katia speak now, but we'll probably move back to David for questions right after that, because David will have to go a little bit early tonight. So Katia, why don't you take some time to introduce yourself, and whenever you're ready for the PowerPoint, let me know. I can share my screen with everyone else.
All righty. Well, and we can kind of play it by ear as to whether or not that's the best thing. So my name is Katia Hansen, and I am a congregant at Palomar UU Fellowship in Vista, California. And I am the president and CEO of URISE, which is Unitarian Universalist, Refugee and Immigrant Services and Education. I am originally from Hudson, Wisconsin, and that's where I grew up. And that's why I was asking the temperature, because I will be flying back to Minneapolis on Wednesday. I have just getting over bronchitis, so my apologies if my voice is kind of cracking and going in and out. It's been a frustrating go. My family is, we normally say that we're half Danish, half Lithuanian, but it's actually kind of a third Danish, third Lithuanian, and a third German, and a little other. I'm closest to my Lithuanian relatives. I'm third generation in the United States, but we were able to maintain very close relationships with our family in Lithuania, even during the time of Soviet occupation. I grew up writing letters to my cousins that would come back that the KGB had, taken a black marker and marked through, because somehow 13-year-old girls talking about blue jeans and boyfriends and dreams of singing on Broadway were, was very dangerous stuff.
Wow.
That definitely played a role in my choosing to do immigration law as a profession. My emphasis in law school is in working with marginalized immigrants, so immigrant victims of domestic violence, victims of human trafficking are my primary areas of focus. And then, of course, with URISE, a lot of the work that we've done is coordinating and consulting with congregations in providing sanctuary, because we really feel that sanctuary is the bailiwick of the faith communities. It's an opportunity for us to live our faith in a very loud and proud manner. And it's our response, it's our unique response to injustice in the immigration system. So we're very excited to continue to be working with that. We've been involved with the New Sanctuary movement starting back in 2007 when the New Sanctuary movement came back into play, and then that's also when URISE was incorporated. We consulted with the UU congregations in and around Denver prior to their decision to become sanctuary congregations, also the Reno congregation, and a number of other UU and other liberal religious congregations in their process. What we offer is assistance, kind of technical assistance and support through the discernment process. And we really feel the ideal situation is that it's a discernment process and not just a reactionary response to an immediate situation. Sometimes we have to just step up and walk our talk and be willing to respond and provide that. But in the ideal situation, we're doing what we're doing right now, which is talking to congregations around the United States and saying, this is how you go through the discernment process. This is how you make sure that everyone in your congregation is on board, so you don't have a rift in your congregation. You don't have people leaving the congregation because they're unhappy. And more importantly, you don't have someone in sanctuary being put in a bad situation because members of the congregation who aren't in favor of sanctuary have decided that they should invite law enforcement or ICE into the sanctuary, into the setting, or doing something to sabotage it, in less overt ways. So a big part of what we do, like I said, is really try to work with congregations, provide support to them in looking at the discernment process. What does it mean, and how do you make that decision? What are the logistics of it? And you've already heard about some of them. Do you have a shower? If you don't have a shower, what are the ways of getting that done? So part of what we do is we work with congregations around like Faithify and other ways of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, so that we can all come together and provide support and help congregations that are able to provide physical sanctuary, help them do that, because there are many congregations that would never be able to do that. We also do a lot of work on the resistance side of it, helping people be involved in immigrant justice in many different ways, whether that's through providing legal clinics, doing citizenship workshops, English language classes. English coffee chat is one of the things that we're a big fan of, and not to worry about the traditional curriculum and classes, but just get people that are willing to sit down and try and have conversations and help people practice their language. We participated in the convening of we had the first convening of sanctuary leaders this August in Arizona, and we brought together those people who had been in sanctuary. We met in Arizona because there were currently 2 people in sanctuary at that time. And we brought together leaders from different faith communities and different coalitions from across the United States, really trying to look at how we can expand this. To be perfectly honest, it was at a time when we did not actually think it was a possibility that we would have the president-elect that we have. Had we known then what we know now, we may not have ever gone to sleep, and we may have just continued to work through the night to try and do more work. One of the things that came out of that was a revised toolkit for congregations that are interested in providing sanctuary. What I will tell you is that URISE has received a grant from the and in order to increase the number of UU congregations that are providing sanctuary. And so one of the things that we are doing in partnership with the UU College of Social Justice and the UU Service Committee is we are actually rewriting that toolkit from a UU perspective. If you look at the toolkit right now, it's a great resource, but it's very much written from a clergy-led perspective. And most of our UU congregations are congregation-led and not clergy-led. And so it doesn't always fit. You don't necessarily have a minister saying, we're going to do this and everyone's going to, make peace with it and come on board. So in a congregation-led liberal religious communities, we tend to have these conversations. We tend to argue it out. We find a way to talk about it, find a way to have cottage meetings and eventually town hall meetings, and then normally a congregational vote. And that's what the discernment process is we help congregations figure out what's the best fit for them in doing that. And that's what's part of the new toolkit that we're rewriting. We're hopeful that we're going to have this done in January, the new toolkit. And we also are going to do a large series of webinars. First is kind of what is sanctuary and do you think you might be interested? That'll be a really large one for everyone across the country. And then we'll be doing a series of smaller ones, which are for congregations that absolutely know that they're interested, but it's walking them through the discernment process. How do you get answers around issues of zoning? How do you get answers around issues related to your liability insurance? How do you deal with laundry facilities? How do you deal with the need for medical care? Part of what we're trying to look at, and I'll be perfectly honest, a lot of this is kind of looking at a crystal ball and wishing that I had more witchy powers than I do, in trying to have a good sense of what is the landscape going to look like in the next few months. We know that part of the wish list that's coming out from different groups for President-elect's first 100 days is a sanctioning of cities that identify as sanctuary cities. So we have a great question as to whether or not that's going to impact how sanctuary congregations are treated, whether they will continue to honor the sensitive spaces memo, which is what allows faith communities to provide sanctuary. To date, as part of the new sanctuary movement, we've not had any instances where churches or clergy or leaders within any congregation have had any legal issues because of providing sanctuary, but there's nothing that says that they couldn't. Prior to November, when we talked about that, we would say, it seems that the risk is quite low. Moving forward, we don't know what level of risk that's going to be. So I'm very thankful that the UUA has been, really clear in trying to connect sanctuary and resistance. It's an interesting thing. In the UUs, and I believe that the American Friends also kind of look at sanctuary as a peaceful act of civil disobedience. It's saying we're going to stand up and not allow this bad thing to happen. From some of the other faith community standpoint, particularly like the Presbyterian, they don't look at it as an act of civil disobedience. They're really clear in trying to identify it as this is what God tells us to do. This is what our faith tells us to do. And so this is us living out our faith. This is just the manifestation of our faith beliefs. And I like both of those perspectives, and I really like to hold both of those up so that each congregation can find what's the way that works for them. Allison Harrington is the minister at Southside Presbyterian in Tucson, and they've had a number of people in sanctuary. She's a dear friend. And she always says, if God tells you to do this, you do this. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. From the UU standpoint, we say, if you are called to do this work, if this is the work that makes your heart sing, if this is what makes you know that you are making a difference in the world, then this is what you're going to do. If you are called to do this work, the logistics will find a way to work themselves out. Whether that's a Faithify crowdfunding to get a new shower installed, whether that's asking members of the community to step up to agree to do the grocery shopping and doing the laundry and sort of things like this. If you're called to do this work, if this is what your heart says, this is what I am called to do, all of the logistics will find a way. And that's what, what we're hoping to do at URISE is really just help people determine if this is what they're called to do. And if they are, then let's use the number of years of experience that we have to help make that happen. We're really lucky, like I said, to have received a grant from the UU funding program. So we're actually able to offer these services at no cost to congregations. And we're thrilled to be able to do that.
Wow, thank you so much, Katia. That was a really cogent and concise explanation of a big amount of what you do. I really appreciate that. Well, so now if anybody does have any questions for David, this will be the time to do that if you want to send them to me or speak them out. In the meantime, as you're thinking about those questions, David, you mentioned a few things I wanted to kind of just tag in on. It sounded like when you brought up the idea to your congregation, there wasn't much resistance. Is that true? It was you had to use restraint to not instantly accept the project. And then the sub question is, you mentioned working with, not for. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit more about that and maybe some of the learning processes that helped you get there. Because I'm assuming there might have been a few moments where people worked for instead and kind of learned that wasn't what was needed.
Okay, first, let me just throw out a different term that we've used in our minute that authorized our offering sanctuary the first time. Was we got away from the term civil disobedience and used Jim Corbett's term civil initiative, and saying we are doing this as an act of civil initiative to protect what the government should be protecting, namely the rights of families to stay together. So that is one of the things that I would share with you, Katia, that's an interesting twist on the language. So when we first got into Sanctuary, when we first decided to become a member of the coalition, it was, welcome because we had this long tradition of involvement in immigration work and the original Sanctuary movement. And then when it came time for us to step forward and offer Sanctuary, yes, just everyone thought this was exactly what we needed to do. And I wasn't even at the meeting that decided this. I had to be out of town, so that I was reported to me that the person who clerked the meeting had to just keep everybody seated and talk through some of the issues. Yes, there are issues about what would we do if we were raided. We have some, contingency instructions on our doors. We are having somebody sleep in the building on the ground floor, the apartments upstairs, just for security, so that we can be on the floor if anybody comes. But we don't expect that. At least we didn't up until November the 8th. Will it change? We don't know. The question of, what is our, who's in line? I tell everybody in our group we're all equal, so I'll be first in line because I helped start this. But they can't arrest all of us, I don't think. Then one of the things that, and I wanted to touch on this and I didn't get into it, one of the things that has evolved in our offering Sanctuary, and in the first case of the coalition offering Sanctuary to Arturo was squeaky clean. He had been falsely accused of something and had been acquitted, and it was just because he had gotten involved with the immigration system that made him a candidate for immigration action. when we dealt with the Jeanette, who we took into sanctuary, her case is a little dirtier. She had a re-entry as well as a false document charge. Then the next person we took into sanctuary had some minor DUI or, involvement. And so I began to get questions from some members of the congregation about what are we doing to screen people? Are we willing to take anybody in? And then in the summertime, when we were rather short-staffed because everybody was out in the field at various things, a case came forward that was somebody had some youthful felony on his record from years ago, and there was a hesitation among the citizen congregations. Do we want to offer sanctuary to this person? Because this could be a very difficult case to win. And we just weren't in our excuse was we weren't logistically prepared at that moment to offer sanctuary, so he got deported, and I feel real bad about that. So the current case we have, the lady has a felony on her record. She's trying to get that overturned, but that's not a clear given that she can do that. So we expect that we, it's a good possibility we could be in sanctuary with her for quite a while, especially if it goes past January 20th. So we have to be prepared for that, and that's one of the reasons we need to build up our support in our neighboring churches and things like that, because we're not that big, and it just takes a lot of people to do this without getting exhausted. Did I answer? So those are some of the concerns we have going forward, how we've evolved. We were chided by the immigrant leaders in our group to say, not everybody's perfect. You can't cherry pick the cases. Mm-hmm. And so we've evolved in that direction, that we were willing to do this. We've also tried to get ourselves involved in the documenting of cases and work with other immigrant organizations in the area, the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition and whatnot, so that we begin to understand these rather than earlier on, rather than at the last minute. So I'll stop.
Thank you very much, David. I wonder if we can have Katia respond after you go, because I think she has more thoughts about that as well. I'd love to.
I don't have to go anywhere at the moment. So.
Oh, you don't? Okay. I thought you kind of had to leave a little bit early tonight, but maybe not.
Oh, I've decided they can wait. So.
Okay. Well, Katia, do you have a response to that? I'm curious about your perception on that.
Well, one of the things that we talk about is in the discernment process, it's very, very common for congregations to want to say, we're only going to take people with a clean case. We don't want any sort of thing like this. And, we don't want anyone with any criminal record or sort of thing like this. And we always want to respect what each congregation feels is best for them. But also, having done this for a while, my experience is very much like what David just described so aptly, is that when you say we don't want anyone with a criminal issue, we don't really know what that means. When you draw that bright line, we don't really know what that means. As someone who knows Jeanette, and has had an opportunity to work with her many times, she's an amazing activist, and she's a wonderful woman, and she's someone that any of you would be thrilled to have in your home, in your congregation. But as David said, her case isn't the Lifetime made for movie Immigrant, right? She actually is a human being who, made decisions, including a reentry. And we find that there's a human factor there, that people are much more likely to have had a DUI, not necessarily because their driving was more erratic, but because they were pulled over for driving while brown. And in the process, the police officer recognized that there was, a smell of beer on their breath, and so they did a breathalyzer. So, the person didn't do anything to cause themselves to be pulled over, other than the fact that they were pulled over because of racial profiling. So those are some of the things that we really try to talk about, that rather than drawing a bright line, find out what the situation is, what the circumstances are with each immigrant, because it does have to be a good fit. When you're bringing someone into sanctuary, something that's really, really important to me is to recognize that we are not the great hope. As David said, our goal is always to walk with them. And often I say our goal is to walk behind them half the time and in front of them half the time. We put ourselves between them and law enforcement, so we are standing in front of them and we're standing behind them the rest of the time and allowing them to choose the direction and lead where their cases go. UUs are amazing for being boots on the ground. What we're not always as good about doing is checking to see where our boots are going to land before we jump. And we always want to make sure that when we're doing boots on the ground, we're not doing boots on the back and boots on someone's neck, when that happens. So I'm really a big proponent of saying all of this work has to be very intentional. We have to recognize that it's going to raise some privileges and issues of privilege for people. As David said, we need to find, oftentimes you're going to need to find people who are bilingual and multilingual. A 90-minute meeting, when it's done bilingually, is now a 3-hour meeting. So you have to decide, are you going to have a 3-hour meeting, or are you going to have meetings more often? Are you going to have 2-hour meetings once a week instead of 1 or 2 90-minute meetings a month? But that's part of working in partnership with the immigrant-led organizations and making sure that we are standing beside and supporting them and leveraging our privilege as faith communities, and all of the other privileges that we may have, whether that's education, whether that's skin color, whether it's income, but leveraging all of those privileges to really do the best that we can to our immigrant siblings who are in need. Which again kind of goes to that idea of really taking each case for each case and not drawing hard lines and saying, we won't take anyone who has this issue, we won't take anyone who has this issue. Because you really need to be open to finding out what that is. I saw that Denise had sent a question about liability concerns. And I just want to be mindful of time, so I'll just do a quick answer to that, but I'm happy to have conversation one-on-one with you after this to have some more very specific conversation. The first thing that we always encourage people to do is get a copy of your actual insurance policy. Most people don't have a copy of the policy, they just have a copy of the summary. So get a copy of the policy and really look at what issues may be a part of it. Some insurance policies actually would prevent you from having someone living on site. Some insurance policies, you just would need to get that changed or add a rider to it. We've been trying to work with Church Mutual because we know a lot of congregations use Church Mutual for their insurance and try to have this conversation about sanctuary. It started back at General Assembly and they were open to it, and then they we just haven't had a lot of communication back from them. Post-election, of course, now it's even more important that we kind of keep moving forward and trying to have more conversations about that. Back when First UU Denver took Arturo in, they were lucky enough to have, as part of their Sanctuary and Immigrant Rights Coalition, a civil rights attorney who looked at their insurance policy and said, I don't see any problem with this. So they called the insurance company and said, do you have any problem with this? And basically the insurance company came back to them and said, well, we won't cover any claims of or a part of providing sanctuary. What does that mean? So they went back to the attorney, and the attorney said, I don't actually know that that's legal. Now, an insurance company can deny a claim at any time, and then you just have to fight with the insurance company. So the church had to decide how risk averse were they, how risk open were they. And basically what it came down to is they said, how many claims on our insurance have we had in the last 10 years? And I believe that they said we didn't have any. And they're like, okay, what are the chances that we're going to have a claim in the next year? And if so, are we willing to just go ahead and fight this? Because we feel that we are doing the work of what our church is called to do. And our insurance company is supposed to be insuring our church and those people who are here. And that was what they decided to do. That was the risk that they decided to take. In the entire time Arturo was there, they didn't have any claims on their insurance, so it never got tested. We have no idea what would or wouldn't happen from that. The other way that a lot of churches are in a good standing is that churches historically have had a parsonage or an on-site sexton or someone else who's been there. So the question is, do we have a conversation with our insurance company about the fact that we may be offering sanctuary to someone, or do we say there are going to be people here that are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a while? Is that going to be any problem? Do we need to add any additional riders? Why that person is there, many of us think really isn't the business of the insurance company, because they are insuring your congregation, and your congregation has to decide what it is that they're going to do. At our congregation, we hold regular Sunday services. We also hold winter solstice and Samhain and all of the earth-based spiritual celebrations. We also do a whole series of Hindu celebrations. I can guarantee you we've never had conversation with our insurance company about what types of celebrations and worship services we hold. So it kind of falls into that same line of if we're doing the work of our church, and our call is to do sanctuary, then we just need to make sure that having people there 24/7 is not in any way a problem with our insurance company. And if so, what's the rider that we need to get to cover that? And then zoning concerns. Generally, zoning concerns are going to come down with congregations that don't own their own building, and if they are in like an office park. I realize those are kind of two different issues. It's generally not going to be a zoning issue. You can always have the problem of NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people. So you definitely, want to just double check. Most congregations that own their own building are in a residential area already. And again, so many churches already have a parsonage, or they've historically had a parsonage, or they've had an on-site sexton. So, that issue, isn't, it isn't a new concept for churches. What is the new concept is sanctuary, and the people saying, hey, we don't think that this is safe, this is in our backyard. Right. So certainly there's consideration of how you may get along with your neighbors.
Yeah. I want to go back to a question earlier for David, and this is a great question, and I also want to just take a moment to say all three of our panelists tonight have really talked about relationship building and relationships being the center of this work. I loved hearing, David, how you talked about just sharing meals and being a community, like really integrating a person into that community, and that's the focus. So in that spirit, Denise had a question here for you. Did you have a liaison or a personal contact kind of coordinator person to work with the family so they didn't feel overwhelmed?
We've had a committee of people that were designated as the coordinators in our community. I'm not exactly sure how First Unitarian handled it, but I know the key people who are members of our Coalition Action Committee were centrally involved in that. And I think one of the lessons we learned with Arturo, what Jen Piper, the AFSC coordinator, learned was that she couldn't do it. And so she was so happy when we took Jeanette in, and that we already knew how to do hospitality. We do that all the time when people come to Denver in our yearly meetings and things like that. So, we just, rolled right into hospitality mode. And I'm not sure if that answers the question, but it's a, just everybody's involved. We keep inviting people to sign up to we have an open spreadsheet where we've kind of divided the day up, morning visit, meals, afternoon visit. Now with a 1-year-old in the building, the afternoon visit involves playing.
Yep.
Playing with and giving them another break, Ingrid a break,
Yeah.
And then like we had at the welcoming, Ingrid made hot chocolate, Peruvian hot chocolate, and we shared that. And then Wednesday we're going to have pozole and tamales. And
yeah, that's wonderful. So Denise has a question for you as well, David, and then we'll return back to Katia with a few more questions. Go ahead, Denise.
We have a large, thank you. we have a large congregation, and we also do a program called Families Moving Forward, which is housing people that are homeless a few weekends during the year. So we have had people living there. But one of the things I found out with a large congregation is that people felt overwhelmed with everybody maybe asking the same questions or things like that. We've decided to do a survey, sort of an asset mapping, is asking people what they're interested, what skills they have, like do they have legal skills, or do they have cooking skills, things that they want to contribute. Does anybody already have something like that? Or is that something the sanctuary movement has done? Before our program here, Isaiah hasn't done that. And I wondered how you organize all those volunteers and how you do it so that it isn't overwhelming for families, I guess. I wouldn't want, 35 people working with me, asking maybe some of the same questions, and I'm trying to think about how to coordinate that and organize that. So it might be for Katia and David, I don't know. Thanks.
I don't know of any tool for, sorting out those skills. I guess we're working on a self-selection process if you are a cook or want to do laundry or things like that, but you'll put yourself down for that task. And then one of the functions of the coordinating committee is that, we take some of the questions and try, and people are respectful of Ingrid's space and not try to go through the committee to see what's needed. So I'm taking a lot of calls about that. And then in terms of outsiders from our meeting coming into the building, we're a little cautious about giving away the cipher code to walk in without, having some intermediate point of contact, because we don't want to put that out on an open document. So
I think we're going to go a little bit longer than usual tonight, just because we have such great questions and resources right here. So maybe 10 more minutes. But Katia, hopefully you saw some of these questions down here, and maybe you can speak to this Denise's question as well. I'm curious how this looks with large congregations, especially, and then also what capacity a smaller congregation still has as well.
Okay. I'm going to just do one thing on what Denise said and what I would say, or her question related to volunteers. And I don't know that anyone has a specific tool that they use. One of the things we do say is that there are a number of coordination rules people that need to be part of the leadership team, if they just agree that they're going to coordinate specifically around like meals, entertainment, sort of thing like that. And that, that needs to be part of your leadership team, and that person has to have some comfort level with spreadsheets because that's kind of how you're gonna do that. And like David said, it's an important thing to have families come in that are willing to share their meals, not just drop off food, but actually sit down and share meals, because otherwise it's like this person is in solitary confinement. But we also need to do that based on what it is that they need, because if they're more introverted, it's not, they're not going to want someone coming every single day and sharing meals with, a group of people every single day. It's also important to have someone that's willing to coordinate kind of entertainment, whether that's, bringing videos in, a Netflix account, family game day, crafts, people bringing in instruments, to play music, sort of thing. Because again, this person, instead of being in a detention center, is in your congregation, and they are basically under house arrest there. So you really do need to have people that are coordinating a lot of different things. So the leadership team, the group that you talk about, I think you said that there were about 4 or 5 people initially, and then expanding out to maybe about 10. Those are going to be the primary people that are going to be dealing with the person in sanctuary, figuring out what they need, helping them set good boundaries with people, and helping them set good boundaries about what it is that they want, what foods they like, what they don't like, sort of things like that. And you will be the primary, that team, you will determine who that team is, will be the primary group working with them. So there was a question about how important is it for a congregation to take a formal vote to be a sanctuary congregation. I'm a big proponent of it, but I'm a UU, right? So I believe that the best situation is that the congregation is in consensus and that they think that this is a good thing and the right thing. If you have a small enough congregation and it's easy for you to make that determination without having to do a formal vote, that's great. What I can tell you is that we've been amazed at the number of congregations that it seems to be a no-brainer and they move forward with it, as well as the number of congregations that they get started in the process and they realize that this is going to split their congregation in two. And so instead of becoming a sanctuary provider, they take those that are interested, make a commitment to become a support congregation, and then they work with another congregation that is more on board, and then they do a lot of the volunteer work. They're part of the meal train, they're part of the entertainment crew, they're part of the resistance team, whether that's accompanying to meetings and sort of things like this. So I personally think that the discernment process and some sort of determining if you're in consensus, and I think that generally tends to be either by very clearly determining consensus or having a vote, is pretty important. We need to make sure that all voices are heard. Because we can't have people sabotaging it, and we don't want people losing their faith community because they didn't have a chance to have their questions answered or their concerns addressed.
Here we have a basic question from Kelly. That's a very good one. If a person is in the congregation in sanctuary, are they really safe from ICE and from law enforcement?
So under the current guidelines and guidelines that have been in place for quite a long time, congregations are considered to be what are called sensitive locations. Hospitals and schools are also sensitive locations. These are places where ICE, as well as law enforcement in general, will not enter and try and enforce either immigration law or other types of law. Now, if an active shooter were to be running down the street with their gun and run into a church, I don't think that that's going to stop the police from going there, and following that person into the church, because that person isn't showing that they have any relationship. They aren't showing that they are a part of that congregation and are held in sanctuary by that congregation. One of the important aspects of sanctuary, and we don't always do it, but the majority of the time it's done very publicly, so it's announced. This person is in sanctuary. We are asking ICE to relook at this case, to reopen the case, to administratively close it, to allow deferred action, to whatever the ask is specifically. Because it's made very public, and because we now are working in the court of public opinion, historically, ICE has kind of backed off and then tried to put pressure. They initially dig their heels in and try and put pressure on that way. But to date, we've been very successful in having all of the sanctuary cases successfully end sanctuary, whether that's because of an extended deferred action, an administrative closure. Someone just recently was approved for their U visa. Other people have received asylum. So it's not like an electric fence that ICE cannot get through. But if they did go through, it would be in opposition to what their current, what their own policies are related to sensitive locations and faith communities.
Well, we have just about 5 more minutes left here. I'm wondering, in all of my reading and research, many organizations talk about the importance of press and of making it very public. I wonder if you could just say a little more about that component, what that looks like, and the importance of it. And I think maybe what you'd say to people who were confused by it or afraid that why would you make it really public though if this person's unsafe, or would that be extra risky to make it big in public?
So the majority of sanctuary cases are public cases, because again, part of the goal is to put public pressure on ICE to enforce their own laws. This goes back to David's wonderful idea of civil initiative, of saying, hey, government, your job is to protect these people, and you're not doing it, so we're going to do it for you, and we're going to publicly hold you accountable for the fact that you're not doing it, right? So all of that fits in wonderfully. There are cases that are done privately. There was one recently, there's one that's been going on that we've been working on for quite a while, that's still a private case. Part of that is determined by the legal team, by the immigration attorneys that are working on the case. Some of it is determined by the relationship that they have with ICE. Neil Anderson is the reverend at, he's the pastor at Reno UU, and they had a sanctuary case, I want to say it was in January of this year. And it was only about 2 weeks long, and they didn't end up going public with it. They took the person in sanctuary and they went to ICE and said, hey, we took this person into sanctuary. We haven't gone public with it yet because we're hoping that we can just get it all taken care of and we don't have to, go public. And they were able to do that, and they were able to work it out and get the case taken care of that way. Part of the reason why it's done publicly is, again, to try it in the court of public opinion. It's the same reason why you'll see, what are they called? Petitions. That's what I was looking for. You'll find petitions like on Facebook that are saying, hey, this person is being held in detention. Please call, your elected officials. Please call Department of Homeland Security. Please call ICE. Please call USCIS and let them know that this person, is a member of our community and we want them to, stay a member of our community. It's putting pressure on them. Because, of course, when people are being watched, we know that they often tend to make better decisions and better thought out decisions. And that can look a lot of different ways. Southside Presbyterian in Tucson, when Rosa was in sanctuary there, they did a candlelight vigil every single day. So every single day for I want to say, 494 days that she was in sanctuary. I'd have to look that up, but it was over a year, every single day. So sometimes the candlelight vigil was 3 to 5 people, and sometimes it was 50 to 100 people. But the point was to raise that awareness and to invite media to be there each time and to say, look, it's still going on. She's still in sanctuary. They still have not been able to do this. ICE has still not been able to follow through and protect this person. And then, has there ever been a case that backfired on a congregation? There were cases in the 80s that the government tried to go after individuals for harboring immigrants. Again, that's one of the reasons why we do it very publicly. Harboring means that we're hiding them and holding them aside. If we're saying, look, this person is coming into sanctuary, we are providing protection for them because we think you as the government is not doing your job the way that you should be, and we're giving you this opportunity to go back and relook at this case. Yeah. Don't worry, we'll just sit here with this person while you do that. There's no harboring going on. There's no hidden agenda. It's very public and very out there. One more thing that I just wanted to say, Jack, is you brought this up earlier, and that was the difference between a large congregation and a small congregation. And probably the most important thing that I would say is the size of the congregation really does not matter. The size of the coalition is what matters, because this isn't about a UU congregation. It's not about a Quaker meeting house. It's about a sanctuary coalition or an immigrant justice coalition or social justice or immigrant rights coalition, however you want to look at that. So ideally, there are rabbis that are a part of this, there are imams that are a part of this, there are priests and pastors that are a part of this, and there are congregants from a wide range of faith communities that are a part of this. And those are the people in the team that are going to make this happen. Whether you are a congregation of 120 people or whether you're a congregation of 500 people, either way, it can't be just you, because your job is not to be the great white hope. You are not going in there to save this person. You are going in there to leverage the privilege that you have, and part of those privileges are the relationships that we create. You're going in there to leverage that, to create a safe space, and to allow this person to kind of, flourish in that, take a leadership role in their own case, advocate for themselves with all of us behind them with pitchforks.
Thank you so much, Katia. That was a really great and full answer. So in the spirit of ending near the time when we were supposed to end, we should probably wrap it up. But if others do have more questions, maybe Katia will be able to stick around just for a few minutes. Otherwise, we can always contact her as well. She has left her information with me. But in the meantime, I did want to just take a moment. I posted this in the chat box already, but I would love for us to do a quick, just one word or one phrase sharing. So if you'll just think about quickly this question: what is the one word or phrase that you will take with you tonight that will keep you spiritually grounded and committed to this work despite all of the possible challenges and resistance?
Well, Susan likes civil initiative, and I like support congregation. So that's a.
I'll go next. My word is inspiration, because every time I talk to congregants and congregations that are interested in doing this, I get even more fired up, and I go home and I think, I don't need sleep. So thank you for giving me another jolt of inspiration.
I'll go next. I'm going to say connection. It's amazing to sit here in Minnesota and be with you all, and to think about all the people, both in our congregation, in the city, in the state, in this country, who are going to be working on this together, who are working on this right now, who are giving us such grounding so that we can go forward. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Love.
I'll go next. I think it's a spiritual calling, and to keep families together.
I think so often.
I'll go next, and Jill. Oops.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Jill Schwendeman. I would say resolve. It's been a real day of grieving for me because of the electoral college, and I just am full of strong emotions and resolve to do what's right and to help us do it as carefully and well as we can.
I'll go next. I feel like this is a real powerful way for us to step in. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I feel like this is a real powerful way for us to step into our faith and stand with people who have been marginalized. And I feel really excited that there's all of you and that we're working on this together, and that there's resources like David and Katia, because I really see how complicated it is. I really can see we can't do this alone. We really need each other. So thank you all.
This is Katia. I feel like there are a couple of things in my mind, but it really feels like an opportunity to act and not react, and to really be thoughtful about it. And I'm just so grateful for the leadership here, for Moose Jaw, for convening this, and for the panelists. This has been really helpful. The one thing I want to get is the date that Katia said there was going to be a training or something in January. So if you'll post that on the chat, that'd be great.
We don't actually have a date yet. It will probably be the last week in January. It'll be very highly publicized though, because it's URISE, UUA, UUSC, UU College of Social Justice, and Standing on the Side of Love. So if you are UU and you miss it, you want to double check what's going on in your life.
I want to thank not only Muscha, but David and Katia for your wealth of information. I guess I'm coming away with much more clarity about what would be involved in sanctuary, and that information gives me hope.
My word.
For me, this is Sarah. For me, the very word sanctuary feels extra weighty and important right now. So sanctuary.
So my word for going on is face. Look them in the face.
And I'm going to riff on what Sarah said, because when I think about sanctuary, I think about safe places, creating safety, and especially in a time of fear, in a time that feels unsafe, to really focus on safety.
So my word is empowerment, especially in this environment. I feel like many people feel like they're disempowered. And so to be able to take action, leveraging our privilege is an opportunity to give people power and re-empower them or empower them feels really powerful.
Well, we only went 13 minutes over. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And like I said, if you want to stick around and ask Katia a few more questions, feel free. But if not, I will extinguish this chalice, and I hope that we keep the light of truth and the warmth and fire of passion in our hearts. Blessed be.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Of course.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, everyone, from Jill.
Thanks, Jack.
Mm-hmm.